The first story is about the adopted dog, but before starting, let me know in the comments section that you have a pet or not. I found him shivering under the streetlight on Maple Avenue, a bundle of fur and bone, so small I almost mistook him for trash. His eyes caught the glow first, two wet reflective coins staring straight into me, not through me, but into me. That was the first thing that made me pause. I don't usually stop for strays. You grow up in a town like mine, and you learn quick. Dogs wander, they bite, they disappear. But something about the way this one sat, head tilted like he'd been waiting just for me, gnawed at my chest. His ribs stuck out under a coat of matted black and gray fur, and when I reached out, he didn't flinch. No growl, no bark, just a faint whimper that sounded almost shaped, like the sound wanted to form a word. The air was damp that night. It smelled like wet concrete and iron. I crouched, rubbed my fingers against his neck. No collar, no tag. His body trembled like he'd been left outside in November for days, though it was early September and still warm enough to sweat under your shirt. I told myself I was being decent. That's all. I had no one waiting at home, just an apartment full of stale air and half-empty beer cans. A stray dog felt like less of a mistake than drinking myself to sleep again. So I carried him back with me. He was light, almost too light, and the way he pressed his head against my chest, it felt like relief, like he'd been through something terrible, and I was the answer. I didn't notice the other thing until later. How quiet the night became the second I picked him up. No crickets, no cars, not even the hum of the street lamp. Just my footsteps and the faint hiss of his breath. Like the whole block had been waiting for me to decide. In my apartment, he circled once on the carpet and curled up like he'd always belonged. I remember standing there, keys still in my hand, wondering why my skin prickled as if I'd invited something in. Not just a dog, something else. I poured myself a whiskey to shake it off, told myself not to be dramatic. It was just loneliness talking. But when I switched off the lamp and the room sank into shadow, I heard it. The sound that froze the drink halfway to my mouth. Not a bark, not a whimper, a whisper. Low, human, from the dark corner where the dog's eyes glowed faintly. And though I swear I didn't imagine it, I couldn't repeat the word he said. Not yet. I barely slept that first night. Every time I drifted off, the memory of that whisper tugged me awake again. I kept convincing myself it had been a dream, or maybe the whiskey had played tricks on me. But then I'd roll over, open my eyes, and see him curled at the foot of the bed, wide awake, eyes gleaming like two wet marbles in the dark. Dogs sleep. That's what they do. But not him. Not once did I catch his eyelids shut. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself it hadn't happened at all. The sun washed the room in pale gold, and everything seemed smaller, less menacing. He looked normal in the daylight, just a scrawny mutt with a patchy coat and two big ears. He wagged his tail when I got up, even licked my hand. That should have settled me. But there was something in the way he watched me pour coffee, silent, tracking my every move, like he was waiting for something. I called him Jasper. Don't know why, it just slipped out, like I already knew his name. His ears twitched when I said it. That bothered me more than it should have. That day I tried to go about things as usual. Work, groceries, ignoring the pile of unopened bills on my counter. But every time I stepped out, I felt pulled back, like I'd left something dangerous loose in my apartment. Twice, I turned around mid-block just to check the door was locked. Twice, I found myself listening for faint noises through the wood. And both times, I swore I heard the scrape of claws against the floor inside. By nightfall, I'd started to relax. He was just a dog, I told myself. I even laughed at the way he flopped on his back while I scratched his belly. His ribs pressed against my hand like piano keys, and his skin twitched in little spasms. That laugh didn't last long, because when I shut off the lights again, he sat up. Not curled, not restless, just sat, staring, his head tilted to the side, eyes reflecting the dim glow from the streetlight outside. And then came that sound. Soft, low, forming syllables. This time I heard it clearly. Cold. The word came out rough, like rocks dragged across each other. But it was a word. My whole body clenched. I sat up, heart beating so hard it made my chest hurt. He didn't move, didn't blink, just whispered it again. Cold. The silence afterward was worse than the word itself. I found myself speaking before I could think. What are you? That's when he did something no dog should do. He grinned, teeth bared, lips curled, but not in a snarl, in a smile. And I swear to you, swear on my life, he whispered my name. I didn't run. I should have. Any sane person would have bolted straight out the door, left the mutt to rot in that apartment. But I just sat there, mouth dry, ears ringing like I'd been too close to an explosion. My own name stretched thin, spilling out of a dog's mouth. He lay back down after, like nothing had happened. Curled up neatly, tail tucked, eyes closing for the first time since I'd brought him home. I stayed awake all night, staring at the shape of him in the dark, afraid that if I blinked, his mouth would open again. Morning brought no relief. He greeted me like a normal pet, tail wagging, paws clumsy on the floor, tongue warm and wet against my hand. But it felt rehearsed, like a costume he slipped into when the sun came up. I tried to leave him alone that day, see what he did when I wasn't watching. I cracked the apartment door and lingered in the hall, ear pressed to the wood. For a long while, nothing. Then a faint shuffle, and another sound, low, uneven, like he was trying to clear his throat. Then my voice, not words I'd said recently, older, raw, from years back. Don't leave me, it said, trembling, the exact way I'd once begged a woman to stay. I nearly fell back from the door. How could a dog know that? How could anyone? I went in, pretending I hadn't heard. Jasper lay in the same spot, tongue lolling like he'd been dozing the whole time. But when his eyes flicked to mine, I knew. He knew what I'd heard that night. I tried a test. I left my phone recording on the nightstand, voice memo running, screen dimmed. If he spoke again, I'd catch it. Proof. I lay there, frozen under the blanket, pretending to sleep. Hours passed. The radiator clicked. Traffic hushed. Then, that whisper again. Hungry. Not in my voice this time. His own, rough and human. A scrape of syllables, more confident now. The mattress dipped. My stomach lurched. He had jumped up beside me. I kept my eyes shut tight, body locked, praying he'd get bored. His breath hit my ear, hot and sour, reeking of iron and rot. Hungry, he said again, louder. I couldn't keep the act. I shot up, shoved him hard. He thudded against the floor but didn't yelp. He only looked up at me, lips curled back in that smile again, tongue sliding over his teeth. That was the first time I realized he wasn't begging. He was promising. And when I checked the recording the next morning, the file was empty. Nothing had saved. By the third night, my apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. Every shadow carried weight. Every sound bent toward that one shape in the corner. I stopped turning off the lights altogether. My electric bill could rot in hell for all I cared. The lamp's yellow glow carved Jasper into something half familiar, half wrong. Dog-shaped, yes, but stretched too long in the spine. Head cocked like it was straining to hear something I couldn't. I tried ignoring him, tried telling myself this was stress, loneliness, whatever excuse I could swallow. But the more I looked, the more he looked back, patient, like he had time to wait out every lie I told myself. On the fourth night, he spoke again, clearer, more confident. Door, just that one word. I froze halfway through pouring a drink. My apartment door was bolted, chain locked. Nothing stirred beyond it. "What door?" I whispered, before I could stop myself. My voice cracked. His head snapped toward me, and in a voice that didn't belong to me, didn't belong to him, didn't belong to anyone I've ever met, he said, "The door you forgot." I dropped the glass. It shattered across the counter, whiskey bleeding into the cracks. I told myself not to listen, but how do you unhear something like that? The rest of the night, I tore through the apartment like a lunatic, checking closets, cabinets, even the crawl space I'd never dared open. No secret door, no hidden lock, nothing. When I slumped back into the kitchen, he was still there, sitting, watching, tail thumping once, slow as a metronome. His mouth opened in a pant, tongue dangling. But I swear to you, the sound that came out wasn't panting, it was laughter. The next day, I couldn't take it. I shoved him into the bathroom, slammed the door, and slid a chair against the knob. All day, I left him there. Every hour or so, I crept close and pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. Then scratching. Then my own voice whispering from the other side. "Please, please let me out. I'll be good. I'll be good." I didn't let him out until midnight. And when I did, he walked past me calmly, brushing my leg with his fur, like he'd been the one testing me. I barely made it to bed before he climbed up again. I tried pushing him down, but his body felt heavier than it should have been. Too heavy for ribs and skin. He pressed against me like dead weight. And then he whispered again, so close my ear ached from the warmth of it. "Not your door, mine." I started dreaming about doors after that. Endless rows of them, stretching down hallways that bent and folded in on themselves like intestines. Some doors were wood, some steel, some rotten and soft as bread. Behind each one, I heard something moving, sniffing, dragging, whispering. I'd wake slick with sweat, Jasper at my feet, head cocked as though he'd been listening to my dreams. By then, I stopped inviting people over. Not that I had many friends left to call. But the thought of anyone else being near him, it felt dangerous. Like showing them a loaded gun and pretending it was a toy. One night, though, I broke. I called Luke, an old coworker, someone I hadn't talked to in months. Told him I needed company. No reason. Just come by for a drink. He showed up with a six-pack, and that look people wear when they know you're circling the drain. Jasper watched him from the couch. Didn't move, didn't wag his tail, didn't blink. Luke laughed, tried to scratch his ears. "Weird little mutt you got," he said. Where'd you find him?" I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, Jasper did. Not loud, not clear, but enough. A garbled croak that twisted into one word. Street. Luke froze, hand hovering above Jasper's head, waiting for me to laugh it off. But I couldn't. My face must have given me away. "You taught him that?" he asked, voice tighter. I shook my head, couldn't even force a smile. Luke left 20 minutes later, said he had work in the morning. But I saw the way he avoided looking at Jasper on his way out, the way his hand lingered on the doorknob like he couldn't leave fast enough. That night, Jasper curled beside me on the bed. His body pressed against mine, too hot, like lying next to a radiator. His chest rose and fell, but his breathing didn't sound like breathing. It sounded like words just short of forming. I buried my head under the pillow. Sometime after 3, I woke to him standing on the mattress. Not sitting, standing. Front paws on my chest, nails pricking my skin through the shirt. His face hovered inches from mine. "You didn't tell him," he whispered. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His eyes gleamed wide and wet, not like a dog's anymore, but like a person's, in a face that wasn't built to hold them. "You didn't tell him what's coming." And then he smiled, that impossible smile again, tongue sliding across teeth, too sharp, too human. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 days after that. Couldn't. Every time I grabbed the keys, my hand froze at the lock, as if turning it meant something worse than staying. I kept thinking about what he'd said. What's coming? Jasper never barked, never begged to go outside. He just shadowed me from room to room, paws clicking on the floor like a second heartbeat. Sometimes I'd catch him standing in the hallway, head cocked toward the wall, listening. Always listening. The dreams got worse. Doors again. But now they weren't closed. They were open just enough to see shapes moving in the slits of darkness. Fingers curling around frames. Eyes gleaming through cracks. And behind me, always behind me, his voice, guiding me closer, promising answers if I just stepped through. I woke one morning to find him sitting in the kitchen chair, like he'd climbed up there while I slept. His paws dangled awkwardly off the edge, but his posture, back straight, head level, wasn't animal. It was deliberate. He was waiting for me. I whispered, "What are you?" He tilted his head, lips twitched. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice clearer than I'd ever heard from him, he said, "Door." I felt the room tilt, stomach dropping as if the floor had given way. My mouth went dry. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to throw the chair over and run. Instead, I whispered, "Show me." His grin widened. He jumped down, nails scraping the linoleum, and padded into the hall. I followed, heart hammering, every nerve screaming to stop. He stopped at the far end, nose brushing the wall beside the bedroom door. The plaster there was pale, unbroken, nothing but flat paint. He sat and stared. I raised my hand, pressed my palm against the wall. It was warm, warmer than it should have been. And as I leaned closer, I thought I heard it. Muffled, like someone on the other side, knuckles brushing wood. A faint whisper, answering my breath. I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, there's nothing there." Jasper's mouth opened. His tongue slid across his teeth, and he whispered in my voice, "Don't leave me, please." I staggered toward the door, the real one, fumbling with the lock. But before I could turn the knob, I heard the scrape. Behind me, The unmistakable grind of wood shifting against wood. The sound of a door opening. The sound froze me where I stood. That heavy scrape, hinges groaning as if they hadn't moved in decades. I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I'd see. The wall was no longer a wall. It gaped open, narrow and black, an impossible seam where there had been only plaster. The air pouring from it was damp and sour, like earth that had never seen sunlight. I'll swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant. Jasper sat by the opening, tail sweeping once against the floor, steady as a pendulum. His eyes shone brighter than they ever had, not the gleam of glass, but something lit from within. "Go," he whispered. I shook my head, backing away. My shoulder hit the doorframe hard enough to sting. No, I'm not." "Go," he said again, louder this time, and then in a dozen voices layered beneath his own. Voices I recognized. Luke, my father, an old lover, even my own, twisted and broken. "Go." The sound pushed at me, rattled my teeth, made my stomach churn. The doorway yawned wider, and from the dark inside, something shuffled. A drag of feet, a wet breath. I slammed the door to the apartment, chain still dangling, and pressed my back against it. But the sound didn't stop. That steady drag, closer and closer, as if the thing on the other side had all the time in the world. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Minutes, hours. Jasper never moved, just watched, patient, his head tilted like he'd already seen how this would end. Finally, the sound receded. The air warmed again. I opened my eyes to find the wall whole. No seam, no crack, just blank plaster. But Jasper, he climbed onto the bed that night without waiting, curled against me like a child. His body was burning hot, trembling. His breath pressed against my throat. "Almost," he whispered. I wanted to shove him off, wanted to throw him out the window, wanted to end it, but I couldn't. My arms locked around myself, my body shaking with exhaustion. Sleep dragged me under against my will. In my dream, the doors weren't in a hallway anymore. They were all around me, thousands of them, stacked to the sky. Every single one rattling, pounding, whispering. And Jasper's voice weaving through it all, patient, coaxing, hungry. When I woke, my bedroom smelled like earth. Fresh dug, wet, crawling earth. And the sheets beside me were empty. The silence woke me before the light did. A silence so deep it felt carved, pressing against my ears until I realized what was missing. No claws clicking on the floor. No steady rasp of breath beside me. The apartment was still, too still. I called his name once, a whisper. "Jasper." Something answered. Not from the living room, not from the hall. From the wall. That same stretch of plaster where the door had opened before. A wet, dragging sound. Something moving inside it. My throat closed. Every part of me screamed to run, but I stepped closer instead. Bare feet sticking to the floorboards with sweat. The air grew damp again, heavy. I pressed my palm to the wall. It was warmer than before, pulsing faintly, like the skin of something alive. Then his voice came, clear as if he stood an inch away. Hungry. The wall split open. Not slow this time, not hesitant. A crack jagged across it like lightning, spilling darkness so thick It bled into the room. And out of it, hands. Thin, gray, clawing hands. Dozens of them, writhing for purchase. They scraped the floor, reached for my ankles. Their touch was ice. I stumbled back, heart clawing at my chest. And there he was, Jasper, emerging from the dark on all fours. But he wasn't a mutt anymore. His body was stretched, elongated, spine arched unnaturally. His face split with that impossible grin. Teeth, too many, too sharp, eyes glowing like lanterns. "You brought me home," he whispered. His voice wasn't layered now. It was pure, strong, undeniable. "Now I bring them." The hands pulled wider, tearing the doorway open. Shapes moved behind him, tall and thin, bent at wrong angles. Their whispers filled the room. Every word I'd ever begged, cursed, or regretted, all spat back at me in chorus. I bolted for the door, fumbling with the chain, the lock, my fingers numb. Behind me, claws scraped closer. His voice followed, calm, certain. "You can't shut the door once it opens." The chain snapped free. I yanked the door open, stumbled into the hall, and ran, barefoot, shirtless, blind with panic. Down the stairs, out into the street, the night air cutting my lungs. I didn't stop until my legs buckled and the world tilted. When I looked back, my building loomed dark and quiet. No cracks in the wall, no glowing eyes, just brick and silence. But I didn't go back. I never went back. And sometimes, when the night is still, when the air feels too damp, too heavy, I hear him again. That whisper, close to my ear. Cold. I don't own a dog anymore. I don't let strays near me. But the worst part? Every time I pass a blank stretch of wall, I feel it. The warmth pulsing behind it. The faint scrape of hands waiting for someone to listen. And I know, one day soon, I won't be fast enough to run. Well, the second story is much more scary and interesting. I need you to listen to me. I'm sitting in my kitchen right now, lights off, blinds drawn, whispering into the dark. The only sound in this house is the soft whine of my dog at my feet. He's shaking, ears pinned back, staring down the hall toward the guest room, like he's waiting for something to step out. You think dogs bark at nothing? I thought that too. I laughed when people said animals could sense things we couldn't. But last night, I saw what he sees. The house isn't old. It's not creaking and haunted like you're imagining. It's a suburban rental, beige walls, cheap carpeting. A place you pass by without looking twice. That's what makes it worse. Evil doesn't need a Gothic mansion. Sometimes it waits in a perfectly normal house, biding its time until you notice. I didn't notice for weeks. My dog did. Every night, around midnight, he'd stiffen, then sprint to one of the empty rooms, guest room, storage room, sometimes the basement door, and bark like his lungs would tear. His hackles would rise, his teeth would show, but he never crossed the threshold. He only barked from the doorway, like stepping inside would kill him. At first, I thought it was mice or shadows cast from headlights outside. I yelled at him a few times, even locked him in the bedroom with me to stop the noise. He never slept. He just sat up, panting, ears twitching toward the walls. But here's the part that started to eat at me. He only barked when I was home. When I left him alone during the day, neighbors said he never made a sound, not one bark. So what was he trying to warn me about? Why only when I was there? You ever feel watched in your own house? That crawling itch between your shoulder blades, the way you turn a light on just to be sure? It got to the point where I couldn't brush my teeth without checking the mirror twice. Couldn't walk the hallway without glancing at every open door. Last night, I stopped telling myself it was nothing. Because last night, when my dog froze at the guest room door, I didn't just hear his barking. I heard something bark back. When I say I heard it bark back, I mean a sound that answered my dog's teeth. Sharp, wrong, like someone had recorded a growl and stretched it until it broke. It came from inside the guest room, thin as the seam between two breaths. My chest went hollow. The dog's bark snagged and then turned into a whine, small and urgent. I stood on the kitchen linoleum with my toothbrush still in my hand because I had been brushing my teeth before. Bed, habit, routine, safety. The taste of mint and copper clung to my tongue. The air in the hallway was colder, like the house had forgotten to close a door to winter. My skin prickled. The light from the street lamp pooled at the bottom of the blinds, making a pale square on the floor that didn't reach the shadows where my dog sat. If you were me, would you open the door? Would you step forward? Tell me honestly, because I didn't at first. I listened. I counted my breaths. I joked to myself out loud about being a grown man scared of a sound. The joke died on the last syllable. The reply bark came again, not quite the same. This time, it wasn't just an imitation of my dog's voice. It had rhythm. It was structured, deliberate. It began slow, then picked up in a cadence that made my dog's hackles flare. He shifted, front paws barely touching the threshold. His eyes were wide and black in a way I'd only seen once, when he got hit by a car as a pup and then recovered. There was history in those eyes now. Fear, yes. Also, something like recognition or calculation. I moved forward because the house had turned treacherous in the space of 3 seconds, and I could not live another night of that sound. The hallway smelled like soap and something else. Metallic, like pennies and old batteries, mixed with the faint sourness of sweat. The guest room door was closed, the knob cool and unresponsive under my palm. I rested my forehead against the wood for a second, feeling the grain rasp my skin, and tried to listen through the wood. There was a sound, not loud, more like a suggestion, a scrape along the inside of the wall, then a softer movement, like fabric shifting across skin. My dog's whine cut into a sharp, thin note. Everything in my chest tightened until I wondered if I'd split in two. My hand found the knob and I paused, breath fogging in front of my face, though there should have been no fog in August. What I didn't expect was how the light behaved. The hallway bulb did something small that mattered. It went dull. Not out, dull, as if someone had dragged a curtain across the filament. Darkness pooled around the guest room door, thicker than shadow. My phone screen said 12:07 a.m., but time stopped feeling honest. I turned the knob. The door eased open. Not pushed, not pulled. Eased, like something inside had been holding it back and decided to let it go. The room smelled of old blankets and a hard, antiseptic cold. The dog didn't follow. He sat back on his haunches by the doorway, his body a low tremor. And then I saw it. On the far wall, where the cheap wallpaper had a pattern of tiny flowers. There was a wet, dark smear that wasn't there yesterday. Something tapped twice from inside the wardrobe. The sound was faint, but sharp enough to slice through the silence. 2 taps, spaced like knuckles on hollow wood. My breath hitched, and for a second, I thought I was imagining it. Then it came again, softer this time, like whatever was inside knew I was listening. I stepped inside. The carpet flattened under my bare feet, damp in spots as if someone had spilled water and never cleaned it. The smear on the wallpaper stretched wider now that I was closer. Thick, dark, irregular. I reached toward it before my mind caught up, and when my fingertip touched, the smell hit me. Rust, rot, and something sour. My stomach turned. It wasn't paint. Behind me, my dog gave a single low growl, then cut it off like he'd been choked. I turned to look at him, and his body wasn't facing the wardrobe anymore. It was angled at me, not protective, cautious, like I had stepped across some invisible line. I whispered his name, and his ears twitched, but he didn't move closer. I wanted to scream at him for leaving me there, but the taps came again, quick this time, 3 in a row. The wardrobe was nothing special. A rental house leftover. Warped doors, brass handles. I reached for it anyway, because that's what we do, isn't it? We check, we open, even when the air tastes like blood and the dog we trust with our life won't take a step closer. My hand shook against the handle. I half expected it to burn, but it was just cold. Too cold. I pulled the door, the hinges sighed, wood against wood, and the smell rolled out stronger. Inside, at first, was nothing. Just coats I hadn't unpacked, one old box shoved against the corner. My chest loosened a fraction, until I looked down. The carpet inside the wardrobe was wet, soaked, really. The kind of damp that spreads into socks and lingers in your skin. And in the middle of that damp, pressed into the fibers, was the shape of a handprint. Too long in the fingers, the palm narrow, as though someone had crawled out and left a mark. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. My dog whined once, and I thought about shutting the door, locking it, pretending I'd seen nothing. But then something moved. Not in the coats, not in the box, in the corner where the wall met the floor. Just the faintest ripple, like a shadow, trying to crawl back under the baseboard. My pulse slammed against my ears. I staggered backward, tripping on the edge of the rug. That's when the whisper started. Not words, breath. Heavy, ragged, dragging against the inside of the wardrobe. I dropped the door, and it swung shut with a dull thud. The whisper cut off instantly. I was halfway out the door when I realized the smear on the wall had grown. It stretched higher now, past where I'd touched it. And my finger? It was still damp. I stumbled into the hallway, dog beside me, at last. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just looked up at me, pupils blown wide, chest heaving like he'd run miles. And from behind the door, the taps began again. 4 this time. Precise, deliberate, almost like counting. I didn't sleep, not 1 minute. I sat in the living room with every lamp on, the TV playing low with no volume, my dog curled against my leg, but refusing to close his eyes. My heart stuttered at every creak of the house, every gust that pressed against the siding. The clock ticked like it was keeping score of how long I'd last. I kept staring down the hallway. The guest room door was closed. but it felt like it was breathing, like the wood would swell and split if I looked away long enough. The taps had stopped, but the silence wasn't relief. It was a trap, a trick of patience. I felt it watching from behind the door, counting me back in its own way. Around 3 a.m, I dozed off. Only for a second, but it was enough. When I opened my eyes, the TV screen was black. Every lamp in the room had gone out. Power outage? No. The fridge hummed in the kitchen. The street light still cut a thin line through the blinds. The lights had been taken. My dog stood rigid, ears flat, body angled toward the hall again. The hair along his spine bristled like needles. His teeth showed in a silent snarl, but he didn't bark. He was listening. I forced myself up, legs trembling under me, and reached for the switch by the couch. Nothing. Dead. My phone flashlight cut a weak cone through the dark, trembling in my hand. I aimed it toward the hall. The guest room door was open. I know. I closed it. I slammed it. I heard the thud. But there it was, gaping like a mouth. My flashlight beam shook across the carpet, caught the frame, the empty space beyond. My throat closed, and I realized my dog was no longer by my side. He had moved ahead of me, standing at the start of the hall. He growled, low and constant, but he didn't cross the line. He planted himself there, like a guard unwilling to abandon his post. The smell reached me before the sound this time. Metallic, rotting sweetness, thick as syrup. It rolled down the hallway, heavy, clinging to my skin. I gagged and pressed the back of my hand to my nose, but the stench pushed through. Then the floor creaked inside the guest room. Not the taps, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. One step, then another. Weight dragging against the boards. I should have run. I should have grabbed my dog and bolted out the front door. But instead, I raised the phone light, pointed it down the hall, and whispered into the silence. Who's there? The footsteps stopped. A pause stretched, long and suffocating. And then, clear as anything, a voice rasped from inside the guest room. My own voice. I'm here. My knees almost gave out when I heard it. My voice, my exact tone, pitch, cadence, spoken back to me from the dark. The only difference was the breath behind it. Too wet, too broken, like lungs dragging water instead of air. My dog snapped his head toward me, as if to say, do not answer. His eyes shone in the thin beam of my phone light, wide and frantic. He growled again, deeper now, the sound rattling his ribs. I swallowed hard. Stay where you are, I croaked, though my throat was desert dry. The answer came instantly, again in my voice, but twisted into something mocking, playful. Stay where you are. The floorboards groaned. Another step. Another. It was coming closer. I couldn't aim the flashlight steady. The beam jittered along the walls, across picture frames, catching corners of nothing. And then it landed on the doorway, on the inside frame of the guest room. There was a hand, not fully visible, just the tips of fingers curling around the wood. Too long, too pale, the nails yellow and cracked. They flexed slowly, dragging against the surface, leaving faint lines in the cheap paint. My dog lunged forward with a bark that shattered the silence. He didn't go into the room. He couldn't, but he charged the hallway, teeth bared, sound booming off the walls. The hand vanished. The footsteps retreated back into the room, faster than before. The air shifted, pressure lifting, just enough that I realized how hard I'd been holding my breath. Then the voice came again, whispering now. Not mine this time. Higher, fragile, almost childlike. Come in. The smell intensified, sour sweet, crawling down my throat until I gagged. My eyes watered, the taste of rot coating my tongue. I stumbled backward, phone shaking in my grip, and slammed into the living room wall. My dog didn't stop barking. He planted himself in the hallway, chest forward, every muscle taut like a bowstring. Each bark cracked through the air like he was fighting something invisible. And then, I swear to you, the hallway bent, just slightly, like heat haze over asphalt. The straight line of it shimmered, edges rippling, as if the guest room was further away than it should be. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, it was normal again. Too normal. The door was closed. My phone buzzed in my hand. Low battery warning. The screen dimmed, threatening to cut me off. The whole house seemed to press closer in that. Second, listening, waiting. And from the other side of the door came a final sound. Small but unmistakable. A dog's bark. Not my dog's, another one. And it was perfect, like an echo of him, pitch for pitch, tone for tone. Except it didn't come from his throat. It came from inside that room. I froze where I stood. My dog barked once more, then cut off, so suddenly it was like someone had pressed a hand over his mouth. His chest still heaved, but no sound came out. He stared at the guest room door, tail low, body trembling, lips peeled back in silence. And from behind that door, his echo continued, steady, perfect, each bark spaced with surgical precision. The sound was wrong in a way that made my skin crawl. It wasn't imitation anymore. It was practice. I backed toward the kitchen, every step deliberate. My phone's light dimmed, then flickered. 10% battery. The beam stretched weakly across the floorboards, painting long, sickly shadows. My hand found the counter, cold laminate under my palm, and I realized I was cornered. Front door across the living room, guest room blocking the hall. Every escape felt like walking closer to it. My dog turned, finally, and pressed himself against my leg, pushing me backward like he was hurting me. He'd never done that before. His weight was urgent, desperate. I nearly tripped over him, but he forced me toward the door. That's when the house itself joined in. The fridge clicked off mid-hum. The clock on the wall stopped ticking. The silence pressed like water filling a tank. I could hear my own blood in my ears, the scrape of fabric against my skin, the tiny hiss of air leaving my lungs. And layered beneath it all, faint but there, was a whisper. Not one voice, many. Overlapping, tangled, impossible to parse. Words in a language I didn't know. They seeped from the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. My dog whimpered, and for a terrible second, I thought he'd bolt. But he stayed with me, pressed so tight against my leg I could feel every vibration of his body. The guest room door creaked, not opening, just bending. The wood shifted under pressure, as though something on the other side leaned against it, pushing, testing. A groan of hinges followed, subtle but steady. I couldn't stand it anymore. I grabbed my keys from the counter, scooped up the leash, and yanked open the front door. The night air hit me like a shock, cold, damp, smelling of wet asphalt. I dragged my dog outside and slammed the door behind us. But outside wasn't silence. Across the street, every porch light was off. No cars. No hum of distant traffic. Just darkness, broken by the single street lamp in front of my house. And under that yellow cone of light stood a shape. Not a man, not quite. It was my height, my build. Shoulders sloped like mine, its head tilted just so, and when it turned slightly, the light caught its face. My face. But the smile wasn't mine. I swear to you, I saw my own face smiling at me from across the street. Same jaw, same scar under the lip, same tired hollows under the eyes. But the mouth stretched wider, too wide, as if someone had pulled the corners with hooks. My dog went rigid. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He whimpered, a high, sharp sound I'd never heard from him before, and tried to pull me back toward the house. Anywhere but toward that thing. I couldn't move. My feet locked to the concrete porch as the figure took a step forward. Its movements were wrong, delayed, like the body was remembering how to walk. One arm swayed too far. One leg dragged a fraction too long. My throat closed, but my own voice broke the silence before I realized I was speaking. "What do you want?" The thing tilted its head, just as I had tilted mine seconds earlier, and answered in a whisper that carried across the empty street. "What do you want?" It was like listening to a recording of myself, warped by static. The porch light above me flickered once, then died. The only glow left was from the street lamp that cradled the figure. Shadows swelled, bending wrong across the pavement. I clutched my dog's leash, but he wasn't pulling anymore. He'd gone still, rigid, his ears pinned back so hard they almost disappeared into his skull. The figure raised a hand, my hand. It flexed its fingers, slow and deliberate. Something dark dripped from the tips, pattering soundlessly onto the asphalt. I whispered, more to myself than to it, "This isn't real." The thing whispered back, "This isn't real." And then it grinned, wider, splitting. I thought I saw teeth where no teeth should be, row after row, like broken glass. I backed into the door, fumbling for the handle. My dog finally snapped, pulling with every ounce of his weight, forcing me to twist. The knob and stumble inside. I slammed the door shut and locked it, though it felt like locking a paper wall against a storm. The house was silent again, too silent. The whispers had stopped. The fridge hummed back to life. The clock ticked once. For a moment, I thought maybe it was gone. Maybe outside was where it stayed. Then I heard it, from the guest room. My voice, clear, close. "I'm inside." The words sank into me like hooks. "I'm inside." My dog snapped around toward the hall, every muscle pulled tight as wire. He barked once, sharp, then again, his throat raw, desperate. The sound filled the house, bounced off the walls, but the voice from the guest room laughed. My laugh. Ragged, cracked, wrong. I felt the air shift. Heavy, humid, like the atmosphere before a storm. The lights above me flickered, dimmed, then guttered out one by one until the house plunged into a darkness so thick it felt alive. My phone in my pocket buzzed, a single vibration, and then its screen went black, dead. The hallway stretched long in the dark. I couldn't see the guest room door, but I knew it was open. I could feel it, like a mouth gaping wider with each second. And from that maw came the sound of footsteps, slow, unhurried, coming closer. I backed against the living room wall, my hands shaking so hard the keys in my fist rattled like bones. My dog planted himself in front of me, teeth bared, his body a trembling shield. He barked into the dark, each snap of sound sharp as gunfire. The footsteps didn't stop. Closer, closer, and then silence, the kind that makes your skull ring. My breath rasped loud in my own ears. My dog froze, stiff, listening. I strained my eyes, and then just a flicker, movement, a pale shape standing in the hallway. It was me, but not. The outline was mine, the shoulders, the tilt of the head, but the face, oh God. The face was a hollow mask of me, stretched too thin, teeth spilling where no mouth should open, eyes black pits that reflected nothing. Its chest rose and fell like it was learning how, and when it smiled, the sound of tearing skin filled the dark. My dog lunged straight into it. His body hit with a thud, teeth snapping, growl ripping through the house. For a second, I thought he'd saved me, until the thing bent low, impossibly low, folding over itself, and whispered into his ear with my voice. Good boy. My dog yelped like he'd been struck. He bolted back, tail between his legs, and crashed into me, nearly knocking me over. I staggered, slammed against the wall, and in that heartbeat, the thing rushed forward. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I grabbed the only thing near me, the lamp on the side table, and swung. It connected, shattering glass and bone, or something that only pretended to be bone. The thing shrieked, not with my voice, but with hundreds. Layered screams, children and women and men, all pouring out of its throat. It reeled back into the hallway, its body stuttering like bad film, jerking too fast, then too slow. My dog barked again, lunging beside me. I didn't wait. I yanked the door open, hauled him outside, and didn't stop running. I don't remember the streets. I don't remember how far. Only that we ended up in my truck, doors locked, engine roaring, miles spilling behind us until dawn broke gray and merciful. I haven't gone back. I can't. The landlord's been calling. Says the neighbors hear barking from inside the house at night. But I have my dog here, right now, and I can tell you this much. He doesn't bark at empty rooms anymore. He doesn't need to. Because sometimes, when the lights go out and the air goes still, I see him staring at me. Not with fear, not with loyalty, with calculation. Like he's wondering if it's me standing here, or the thing that followed us out. And if you're listening, if you hear your dog bark at nothing in the middle of the night, don't wait, don't check, don't listen, because once you hear it answer, it's already too late. I bought a dog cheap online. I shouldn't have bought a dog off the internet. Not from a stranger, not that cheap. Not delivered in a crate that smelled like rusted iron and wet hay. But that's exactly what I did. The ad was too short to be real. Male, healthy, good temperament, needs rehoming. $50. No breed listed. No pictures except a blurry one of what looked like a black and tan blur standing in tall grass. And still, I sent the money. I don't know what I thought I was buying. Maybe I just wanted something alive in the house again. The seller never gave me his real name. He just called himself R. He said he'd drop the dog off at night because that's when he travels better. That phrasing stuck with me. Travels better. What did that even mean? When the crate arrived, there was no knock at the door, no truck, no footsteps retreating down my driveway. Just the box sitting there under the weak porch light, trembling faintly like it was breathing. The smell hit me first. Not dog smell, not even barn smell. Something like pennies left out in the rain, sharp and metallic, coated with damp fur. I remember crouching down, heart racing, hand hovering over the latch. I told myself it was just nerves, just buyer's regret. But even before I unlatched the door, I felt it watching me. Not like a dog does, hopeful, eager, more like the way you feel when you walk into a room and know somebody was already staring at the door, waiting. And when I finally opened it, it crawled out slow, deliberate, too calm for a dog that had been locked inside a crate all night. Its fur was sleek and healthy enough, its body the right size, its movements steady. But its eyes, they didn't track like they should. Both of them moved a half second too late, like marionette glass following invisible strings. When it blinked, it didn't do it naturally, but in 2 stages, left lid, then right, a glitch. And yet when it sat down in front of me, wagging its tail in uneven sweeps, I almost convinced myself it was fine. Just a weird quirk. Dogs came with quirks. But then it tilted its head, and I swear the eyes didn't tilt with it. They stayed locked on me, dead center, like the sockets themselves shifted around the skull just to keep me in focus. I should have closed the door. I should have shoved it back inside and dragged the whole crate to the curb. But instead, I reached down, patted its head, and whispered, "Welcome home, buddy." The skin under its fur felt too warm, too damp, almost pulsing, and that was the first night. The next morning, I found something on the kitchen floor that made me realize I hadn't just brought home a dog. The kitchen tiles were smeared with a dark streak, like someone had dragged wet hands across them. At first, half awake and blinking against the morning light, I thought it was just mud tracked in from outside, but the smell stopped me cold. Not dirt, not anything natural. It was the same iron tang I'd smelled on the crate. The same stinging metal smell that made the back of my throat itch. And there, in the middle of it, sat the dog. He wasn't eating. He wasn't chewing furniture or pawing through garbage. He was just sitting, perfectly upright, ears forward, eyes fixed on the far wall, as if there was something only he could see. His mouth was wet. I crouched down, staring at the smear. It wasn't just one mark, it was several, overlapping, jagged lines. Like writing, only not in any alphabet I knew. They curved and hooked, sharp edges interlacing in a way that made my eyes water if I stared too long. And here's the worst part. The streaks weren't made with paws. They were made with fingers, thin, human-like smears pressed into the pattern. No paw prints anywhere. The dog finally turned his head when I whispered his name, though I hadn't given him one yet. His eyes clicked to me, both shifting just a fraction too late, both blinking out of sync. His tongue lolled slightly, as if he were trying to smile. I tried to tell myself it was blood from a rat, maybe. Or maybe some kind of red clay he'd gotten into. But when I wiped a finger through one of the streaks, it came away tacky and brown. Dried. It was blood. I cleaned it fast. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to believe it. I scrubbed the floor until it gleamed, until the smell was gone, until there was nothing left but an ache in my knees. And all the while, the dog sat there, head tilted, watching me with those dragging, delayed eyes. That night, he wouldn't eat the kibble I bought. He sniffed it once, then pushed the bowl away with his nose and lay down, still watching me. I could feel his stare every time I moved, every time I looked up from the TV, every time I tried to sleep on the couch. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of nails tapping against the kitchen floor. Only when I got up to check, the dog was still in the living room, lying on the rug. His paws were tucked under him. His claws hadn't touched the tile. The sound was still coming from the kitchen. And when I turned on the light, something moved back into the dark, just fast enough that I couldn't see what it was. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the recliner with every lamp in the house on, the dog lying at my feet like some obedient guardian, though his chest rose and fell too slowly for comfort. His breathing didn't sound like panting. It was a low, wet hiss that almost synced with the hum of the refrigerator. When dawn finally broke, the shadows peeled away from the corners of the room, but the unease didn't leave with them. I had to know. I walked into the kitchen again, slower this time, scanning the floor, the counters, the cupboards. Everything looked normal, scrubbed clean from the night before. No blood, no streaks, no sign that anything had slithered out of sight when the light clicked on. Still, I crouched down by the fridge. Something had been there. I could feel it, like the way heat lingers even after a candle goes out. And when I pressed my ear against the wall, I swear I heard something faint inside the plaster. Not mice, not scratching, a muffled wetness like fabric soaking up water drip by drip. I pulled back, heart hammering. My dog padded over, nails clicking on the tile in perfect rhythm this time. He sat down in front of the fridge, eyes lagging as they followed me, then locked straight on the wall. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I snapped. I yelled at him, loud, too loud, because it felt safer to be angry than afraid. Stop it. Stop looking at that. His head tilted. The right eye twitched half a beat late. His tail thumped once, weak, like a signal. That was the first time I realized I wasn't in control. By the third day, I'd stopped pretending he was normal. He didn't bark, not once. He didn't wag his tail unless I forced his attention. He wouldn't touch dog food, cooked meat, anything I set in front of him. And yet he wasn't getting thinner. His body stayed firm, healthy, almost too healthy. What unsettled me most wasn't his silence, though. It was the places I started finding him. I'd leave him in the living room, and when I came back, he'd be in the hallway, sitting at the exact center like he'd been measuring. Once I left him outside to pace the yard, and when I turned back from the kitchen sink, he was pressed against the sliding glass door, eyes wide, tongue touching the glass, fogging it up in slow bursts. That night, I woke to the sound again. Not nails on tile this time. Knocking, soft, deliberate, on the inside of my bedroom wall. And when I sat up, barely breathing, I saw him standing in the doorway. The dog, just standing there, watching. His eyes caught the dim glow of the clock, and I swear to you, they didn't reflect the light back, they swallowed it. I lay there frozen, sheets clutched in my fists, watching him watch me. His body filled the doorway like a shadow, though I could still make out the twitch of his tail, the slow tilt of his head. He didn't move closer. He didn't leave. He just stayed there for what felt like an hour. Long enough for my legs to cramp, for my breath to rasp raw in my throat. Finally, I whispered, because silence was worse. "Buddy?" The sound seemed to snap him out of something. His body jolted, stiff like a puppet tugged on its strings. He turned, padded down the hall, and disappeared into the dark. But I didn't sleep again. Not really. I only drifted, waking at every creak, every sigh of the house, half expecting to see those eyes fixed on me again. By morning, I convinced myself it was just nerves. That's what you do too, right? You'd rationalize. You'd tell yourself, maybe you dreamed it. But the hallway carpet told me I hadn't. A perfect circle was burned into the fibers where he'd stood. Not scorched black, but pressed flat, spiraling inwards like something heavy and hot had turned on itself over and over. I touched it. The fibers crumbled under my fingers. The dog came padding up behind me, silent except for the faint squelch of his breath. His head brushed my arm as if asking for affection, but when I looked into his eyes, they lagged again, both of them swimming into place, locking onto me with a hunger I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't pet him. I couldn't. My hand shook too badly. That afternoon, I tried to leave him outside. I told myself it was for his own good, that he needed fresh air, space, sunlight. I shut the sliding glass door, pulled the curtains, and sat in the kitchen with my head in my hands. But I couldn't shake the feeling he was still inside. I opened the curtain just an inch. He was there, nose pressed flat against the glass, steam blooming in uneven bursts, eyes unblinking. His mouth was moving, slow, rhythmic, like he was trying to form words. And then, I swear to God, I heard it. A murmur. Too low to be clear, too broken to be a real word. But it wasn't a growl. It wasn't canine. It was speech. My stomach dropped. I slammed the curtain shut. That night, the knocking came again, louder, on the bedroom wall, right behind the headboard. 3 sharp racks. A pause, then 3 more. And when I finally got the courage to sit up, heart stuttering, I saw the doorknob turning. The knob turned halfway, then froze. I couldn't breathe. My whole body locked, as though the bed frame itself was holding me down. And then, slowly, too slowly, it rotated the rest of the way. The door creaked open an inch. Just an inch. Enough for me to see him. The dog's muzzle pressed through the gap first, wet nose glistening, steam rising from each exhale like smoke from a pipe. Then his eyes followed, lagging, twitching into place, locking onto mine through that tiny slice of dark. I whispered, hoarse, "Stay out!" The words felt ridiculous, like telling the ocean not to crash or the wind not to blow. But he froze at them, just stood there, mouth slightly open, teeth gleaming faintly in the spill of moonlight from the window. Then, without a sound, the door eased shut. I didn't sleep again. Couldn't. I sat up, knees to my chest, waiting for another sound. But the house stayed still. No nails on the floor, no knocks, no murmurs behind the walls. Just silence. And silence can be worse. When morning came, I stumbled into the kitchen, half dead with exhaustion. The air hit me first, thick, coppery, metallic. The fridge door was open, Inside, my groceries were shredded, packages torn, raw meat missing, vegetables scattered like trash, and in the middle of it, on the lowest shelf, was something that hadn't been there before. A jawbone. Human. Still slick with tissue, teeth chipped like they'd been gnawed. I staggered back, gagging. My vision swam, and then I felt it, the warmth at my ankle. He was sitting right behind me, tongue lolling, eyes trying to catch up to my face. His fur was damp around the muzzle, the way dogs get when they've been chewing a rawhide. Only this wasn't rawhide. My body wanted to run. My brain wanted to scream. But some other part of me, some primitive, frozen part, did nothing. Just stood there, locked in that stare. Finally, he padded past me, tail brushing my leg, and settled on the rug, like nothing had happened. I threw the jawbone out that afternoon, double-bagged, shoved deep in the outside trash can. My hands shook the whole time. My eyes watered from the smell. But when I came back inside, he was already waiting in the hall, exactly where the carpet circle had burned flat before. Sitting, patient. His mouth moved again, and this time the sound was clearer. Hungry. I swear it wasn't my imagination. I swear those syllables left his mouth. And that was the first night I locked my own bedroom door and pushed a chair against it. But by 3 a.m., the chair began to slide on its own. The scrape of wood on wood jolted me upright. At first, I thought it was just the chair settling, the floorboards shifting. But then it moved again. Slow, steady, deliberate. The chair legs groaned against the floor, inch by inch, as if invisible hands were dragging it back. I pressed both palms flat against the mattress, heart jackhammering. The knob rattled once, then stilled. The chair gave one final squeal and toppled sideways, clattering against the floor. Silence. Then a sound like wet breath seeping through the crack beneath the door. I clamped my hand over my mouth to smother my breathing. The smell crept in first. Iron, damp fur, rot. Then the whisper followed. Not quite words this time, just syllables shaping themselves around an imitation of voice. It lasted a full minute before fading. The smell lingered longer. And then, nothing. I didn't move until daylight bled through the blinds. When I finally opened the door, the hallway carpet had changed again. A second circle pressed into the fibers just outside my room. This one wasn't burned flat like before. It was wet, glossy. When I touched it, my fingers came away dark and sticky. Blood, fresh. But there was no trail, no body, no explanation. The dog was downstairs, curled on the couch as if he'd been sleeping all night. His chest rose and fell in that unnatural rhythm, too slow for any living thing. His eyes slid into place when I stepped into view, and his jaw twitched as if suppressing a grin. That day, I couldn't stand being in the house. I left. I drove. I didn't care where. I just needed out. My hands trembled on the wheel. My chest ached. But for a few hours, I almost felt human again. When I came back, dusk had settled. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I checked every room, every corner. No dog, no sound. Relief bled into me, fragile and temporary. Maybe he'd gotten out. Maybe I was free. I sat in the recliner, exhaling for what felt like the first time in days. The silence wrapped me like a blanket. And then I noticed the reflection in the dark TV screen. He was behind me. Not on the floor, not sitting patiently this time. He was standing upright, hind legs planted, front limbs hanging loose at his sides, head cocked, eyes dragging into alignment as they locked on mine through the glass. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the reflection, praying it was a trick of exhaustion. But the reflection blinked, one eye, then the other, and I heard the floorboards creak closer. I don't know how I managed it, but I bolted, straight from the recliner to the stairs, skipping 2 at a time, slamming the bedroom door behind me with every ounce of strength I had. My chest burned, my legs shook. I pressed my back against the door, waiting for the crash of claws, the slam of weight. But nothing came. Silence again. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, my pulse drumming so loud I thought it might echo through the wood. Minutes bled into an hour. My body ached, but I didn't dare move. When I finally lifted my head, I saw him. Not in the room. In the mirror, across from my bed. The glass shimmered faintly in the dim light, and there he was, standing in the middle of my bedroom, as if the reflection belonged to some other reality. Upright again, eyes blacker than shadow, mouth stretched too wide, tongue dragging the floor. But the space behind me was empty. I turned, quick, desperate. Nothing. Turned back to the mirror. He was closer, so close that his teeth scraped the inside of the glass, leaving faint streaks like frost on a window. I swear the sound came through, sharp and wet, even though it shouldn't have. I grabbed the blanket off the bed, hurled it over the mirror, heart pounding like a war drum. I pressed my forehead to the mattress, whispering prayers I didn't even remember learning. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time my eyes drooped, I heard it. Low murmurs threading through the dark. Not growls, not words I could understand. Something older, too deliberate, weaving around the corners of my mind. By dawn, my skin was clammy, my eyes burned, and my bedroom smelled like a kennel drenched in blood. When I finally dared pull the blanket back, the mirror was empty. No scratches, no fog, no dog. I thought maybe it had ended. Maybe he'd left me. But then I heard the refrigerator hum downstairs stop mid-cycle, cut clean like a throat closing. The house went dead quiet, and from below, in a voice not quite human but straining to be, came the call. Come down. Not barked, not growled, spoken. 2 words, clear, waiting. And against every instinct, every ounce of survival, my legs carried me to the stairs. The stairs groaned under my weight, every step echoing too loud. In the dead quiet, I gripped the banister like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My throat was dry. My stomach knotted. The living room light flickered as I reached the bottom. Once, twice, then steadied. The dog was there. He wasn't on all fours anymore. He stood in the center of the room, hunched but upright, limbs hanging wrong, elbows jutting too far out. His chest expanded in that slow, alien rhythm, each inhale. Whistling wet, each exhale sharp as a hiss. His head tilted, and those eyes, those fractured, delayed eyes, dragged themselves into alignment with me. Sit, he rasped. The word clawed its way out of his throat like it hurt him to form. I didn't move. My legs shook so badly, I thought I'd collapse on the spot. Sit, Louder now. More certain. My knees buckled. Not out of obedience. Out of some pull that felt like gravity itself had. Shifted in the room. I sank onto the bottom step, breath shallow, every instinct screaming to run, but my body locked. He lurched closer, the bones in his legs popping as though they'd been bent too long in the wrong direction. His shadow stretched across the rug, swallowing everything in its path. You, mine. The words slurred, broken, but I understood. His mouth split in a grin too wide, gums slick, teeth not shaped right anymore. Too many. That was when the floor beneath him darkened, spreading like spilled ink. The air reeked of iron, rot, wet fur. The stain reached the circle, burned into the hallway carpet, and merged with it. Something moved inside that darkness. Not him. Something deeper. A hand, long, thin, wrong, pressed against the inside of the stain like it was a window instead of a floor. Fingers scraped the wood, curling upward. The dog's body twitched, spazzed, then straightened like a puppet on taut strings. His eyes rolled back, then snapped forward again, both locking perfectly on me this time. No more lag. "Stay," he whispered. The floor bulged. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw afterward. Somehow, I tore my body free, stumbling backward up the stairs, 2 at a time. I slammed my bedroom door, shoved the dresser against it, and collapsed in the corner. Downstairs, the sounds grew, knocking, scratching, something wet dragging across the floorboards. The dog's voice, warping, splitting into 2 tones at once, and then silence. I don't know how long I stayed there. Hours, days maybe. When I finally opened the door, the house was empty. The circles were gone. The smell was gone. So was the dog. But sometimes, when the fridge hums, when the walls knock at night, when I catch my reflection in a dark screen, I see his eyes lagging into place, waiting. And I know he's not gone. He's patient. And one night soon, when I'm too tired to fight it, I'll hear that voice again. Stay.